What is going on, you beautiful, beautiful bastards? Thank you all for stopping by here today. I'm Brandon Sylvia. This is Unnecessary Rambling, and today we're talking about the games I am playing, the games I have been playing as of late, and there is a lot of stuff to dive into here. No shortage of titles to play in October, which is, you can never complain about that. So a lot of stuff on the docket for today, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's go ahead and get into this. As always, drop down in the comments below. Let me know what you have been playing. Anything that really caught your attention, anything you dove into for the first time and you're like, hey, I need to recommend this to somebody. Always love hearing those recommendations, so hit me up in the comments, man. Okay, so I'm looking at my list here, and I don't even know where to begin. It's a lot. This is going to be a long video. Just going to go ahead and warn everybody. Grab you a damn cupcake. Grab you a damn cupcake. A cup of coffee. What are some other things that begin with C? Some chips. Some chipotle. Some crackers and cheese. Some corn. Spelled with a C, not a K, but, corn with a K is good too. All right, so let's go ahead and jump this thing off with, let's go with Gotham Knights. That's the first one on here. That's the first one that I have to talk about for today. And I know pretty much all of you have heard that Gotham Knights isn't a great game. And I won't come on here and say that it is. It's not a great game. There's things about it that I do like, and I think that there is a good game somewhere in there, but it's a big mess of moving parts that when synced up together just don't flow well at all. This has like all the core DNA of what you would expect from your live service games. It has all the looty progression, the grindy upgrades, all these things that you typically find in your live service, grindy multiplayer experiences. And this is not supposed to be that. Even whenever you're playing it co-op, it's a story-based co-op experience. It's not trying to be a live service. It's not trying to keep you in the game for years and years and years. It's not trying to provide you with new updated content and then a battle royale. It's not doing any of that, but it is very, very grindy, very monotonous, very just tedious to get from where you want to be, where you want to go to get to that point. It's never a straight line. It's okay, cool, this story thing is really interesting here. I find Clayface to be fascinating. I find Harley Quinn to be fascinating. I find these different villain arcs to be really intriguing and compelling. But to get to them, I got to go off and do 10 side quests, interrogate 10 people here, and go do all this little meaningless, grindy garbage to get back on the main path that is actually compelling and interesting. And it's just like, why? Why set up your game like that? And even when you go off and do those things, at least with, I think of something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where sometimes, you got to grind a little bit to level up. It felt like at least some of that stuff was fun and engaging to go and mess around with. Whereas with this, like, you go and you have to interrogate the different bad guys in the open world. And when I think back to like cool ass interrogation segments, I think back to the Punisher on the PS2, and you could get real information from interrogating these people, and it had like some sort of story consequence, and it tied together well, and you're like, okay, cool, this is progressing the narrative, so I will go off and interrogate these people, in which you could torture the people in that game as well, so it made it a little bit more fun for fucking sadistic weirdos like myself. But if you played the Punisher on the PS2, you're not about to sit here, watch me, and judge me. You're lying. You tortured them damn people on the Punisher and the PS2 as well. I'm not crazy, I promise. But with Gotham Knights, the interrogation, you go up to these people and you grab them, you hold R2, and it's not even, it's so damn tedious to the point where you can't just like go up to people, grab them, and interrogate everybody. There's only certain people, and you have to scan them before going in to interrogate them. So you go in and you have to scan the person that you want to interrogate. You go up to them, hold R2 to grab them, and then you press triangle to interrogate them. And then they give you like nothing. They drop little orbs, and you collect the orb, and that is what is considered the interrogation info that you get. And it's like, dude, I gained nothing. No consequential story details, nothing. Like, there's a couple times where they lay it out perfectly for you to get a little bit of story info, but for the majority of the time when you do those interrogations, you get nothing out of it. And it's unfortunate, man. It's really unfortunate, because there is in there, like, when you're in the belfry, and I'm sorry if you hear the rain, but you're in the belfry and you're interacting with, the different characters. You have your Nightwing and your Red Hood and your Batgirl and Robin, and they're interacting together. They're building camaraderie. They're coming together, and they're facing sort of moral dilemmas throughout the game. Like, Red Hood, he's kind of a G. Like, I played as Red Hood throughout the whole game because he had a little bit more grit to him. He was cussing and just he felt like a bit more of a badass. I was like, you know what? Let me play through Red Hood, because once again, it's like I'm just craving a real Punisher game to come back. So I guess I felt like that was somewhat similar there with having the guns and the brutal, powerful melee combat, but whatever. So I played with Red Hood, and there's like little story missions in the game where Red Hood, he's shooting too hot. Like he has his hollow points or whatever tuned up too high, or I don't even know how all that shit works, but they have some system where Robin comes in. He's like, hey man, I think you're running a little hot there with those bullets that might can kill somebody. And they have it all set up with the technology to where they're trying to pierce the armor but not kill the people, and however the hell they have it set up. But Robin's like, hey, I think you're running a little hot there. And Red Hood's like, yeah, whatever. And Robin, like, this isn't a big spoiler, but skip ahead 30-45 seconds if you don't want to know any story details. Robin steps in the way of the dummy that Red Hood is practicing on. He's like, okay, well, we'll try it on me then. Try it on me if you don't think you're running hot. It's like, oh, shit. So how much does Red Hood really care here about Robin? And then, a lot of little story details early on about when because Batman is gone in this game. Batman is, he's there at the beginning. He does die. And yeah, I'll leave that there. But Batman is gone in the game. And you are sort of trying to reclaim Gotham and keep his presence felt without him actually being there. So you still want to instill fear in the bad guys in Gotham City, but Batman's not there to do it himself, and you want to keep the justice and keep the peace, and not that there's ever peace in Gotham, but you know what I'm saying. So there's a moment where you're in the group with everybody, and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, how are we going to go about this? And you're starting to feel a little bit drained. The odds are against you, and the stakes are high, and the pressure is mounting up. And there's a couple people in the group who are like, look, I know Batman didn't kill people, but I don't know. This situation is getting dire. I'm not sure if we can keep going with that moral or ethical code. Like, we may have to change things up here. And it's like, oh shit. The stakes are getting high, and I won't go any further on how all that evolves. That's early on in the game, so no spoilers there. But I think the story is somewhat compelling, but the problem becomes where you have 4 different characters, those 4 that we listed off, and you have, I think I put about 25 hours into it, so you have 25 hours to build up the arc for each character in the main story, and that's just, it's impossible. It's next to impossible. I think they do some interesting things to try to account for that and to adjust for that, where you'll take different characters out into missions and the enemies or the different NPCs will respond differently to you based off of who you chose. So say you're Batgirl and you go out and talk to a character in the open world, and there's like a statue of Gordon, and like a in memoriam statue, and someone will respond to you if you're Batgirl around that statue appropriately, with that being her father, yada yada yada, that you'll have a different conversation that triggers there. Or say with Red Hood, you'll talk about the Lazarus Pit and him kind of being revived from that, brought back to life from that, if you play as Red Hood in a certain encounter with a certain character in the game. Won't go any more into it, but it's so hard with damn spoilers, because these things are baseline. Whenever you run across it in the game, you'll be like, what the fuck? You could have said that. That's not a big spoiler. But I don't know. When people are talking about stories, I've said this 150 times, but when people are talking about stories, I'm always like kind of, I'm on edge a little bit. I don't want to have anything spoiled for me. And I do think, like I said, the shining star of the game is actually the story. The cutscenes are presented well. I think it's an interesting story. It's just there's not enough time because there's so many characters that you're having to build up. And also there's a lot of villains you're having to build up. You have, and I won't go through all of them, but I know I don't know. I think I already might have spoiled one, but I'm sorry, man. But in the trailer, I know Harley Quinn is there, and I already said Clayface, so I'll just leave it there. But there's other villains as well. And the stories, they peter out so fast, man. You're building up an interesting plot, and you're like, holy shit, I'm kind of on board with what's going on here. And then as soon as it's starting to build up, it just phases out, and it's like, damn, I just wish it was structured a little bit better than that. And another thing I want to touch on real quick, I know probably a lot of you saw this, the Living La Vida Loca fucking clip that went viral on social media, where people are clowning on Gotham Knights for having that Living La Vida Loca song playing in a mission. And it's when you see it out of context, you're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But just to give a little context on that, it's not as jarring as you think. The whole entire mission structure for when that song triggers, it's just all insanity, silliness. You're chasing a fucking balloon around that Harley Quinn has you running around chasing this balloon. It has important information attached to the balloon. You're chasing it around. And Livin' La Vida Loca just plays. It's just a subversive sort of, it just puts it in there real quick to just have this kind of like, oh, everything's kooky and weird. When you see it actually, when that actually happens in the game, I don't think it's all that bad. I think it's funny, and I think, having that clip go viral, I do think that I can understand why people immediately were like, what the fuck? Well, this is so out of place. But when you see it in context, it's not as bad. It's still a little like weird, I guess, but the whole mission is weird, so it doesn't feel too out of place there. Now, for the combat, this is crazy, and I can't believe this is the reality. You can't counter. So, let me reiterate. You can't counter the entire flow of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City and Arkham Knight, and was the counter system. That's where the flow came. The flow came from that. It's not here in Gotham Knights. And so you're just button mashing and pressing circle to evade people. And then with, like, your different characters have different abilities. With, Red Hood is who my main character I played as, and he had, pistols that he used. And so you L2, R2, and that is cool to have just a long range form of attack there. And Batgirl plays a lot more similar to Batman, and then Robin has like his little slingshot thing that he uses. And like I said, Batgirl has the better. I didn't play too much as Nightwing. I should have dove a little bit deeper into Nightwing. And the combat is okay. It's okay. You have your different upgrades you go in, and the skill trees are fairly simple enough. You get some okay boosts and bonuses to your character. Like my main thing I like to do was I like to go in, grab enemies as Red Hood, and I believe, it's L2 to grab, I think. L2 or R2, and then you can press circle, you attach a grenade to the enemy, and you throw the enemy at other enemies, and then he'll blow up the other enemies with him. Like the enemy with the grenade attached to him, he blows up the other enemies on that are in that radius. So, and then also, as you keep upgrading, there's one where you attach a grenade to him, you throw him, and then as the enemy lands, wherever he lands, like a radius or a circle of grenades kind of appear around him. So it'll blow up a bunch of different people in that range. So there's some cool little things like that I enjoyed messing around with, and I do think there's some okay upgrades and skill trees. There's a lot of focus on different gear and crafting and upgrading and modding, and so if you're not into that, I personally don't have a huge problem with those things. It can feel like at times you have so much shit piling up, so many different we'll just call it, I don't even know what the hell you want to call it. We'll just call it like coins, or we'll just call it points. You have so many different points to spend, but it's not just like this all-in-one simple lined up, you're spending a select amount of money or coins or whatever. It's a bunch of different things, and you have to go out and, okay, let me go find 48 of this, but it's actually, let me take that back a little bit. You really never have to find any of it. You're flooded with so much of that shit just by going out and doing the main campaign, and that you can pretty much at all times upgrade whatever the hell you really need to upgrade. So at least it's not bogging you down to where you're going out and hunting for more material or more points to spend, but it is breaking up the flow of the game a little bit as you're just sitting there in menus kind of trying to figure out, okay, well, exactly how do I craft this one? What is different between this and this? Is this mod useful? Oh, I can fuse these two mods to make this one super powerful mod. How the hell do I do that? Like, you're spending a little bit too much time in menus for a superhero game, so, but that's going to vary from person to person. I gotta say, for me personally, I don't really mind that stuff all that much. I kind of like a little bit going in there tinkering and having my different suits for Red Hood and different color palettes that I can choose from, and I select a different friggin' pair of boots for him, some different gloves for him. I don't know. I'm kind of a sucker for shit like that and tinkering around and customizing and just making slight changes, but I could see a lot of people not being pleased at all with spending that much time in the menu screens and adjusting in this more role-playing style fashion for their superhero game. It's a big departure from your Arkham games. And I think whenever you hear WB Montreal developing the game, developed Arkham Origins, very similar. Arkham Origins it's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Arkham games, but very similar structurally. This is not. This is quite a bit different, while trying to still keep some core essence of the Arkham games there. And, you do have like some stealth sections sneaking around a little bit, and that can be fun, going up behind enemies, taking them out. And there's some investigative elements that just it didn't really click with me the way any of the Arkham investigation sequences clicked with me. But I'm not... You know what? Let's go to Metacritic. Let's see where Gotham Knights is on Metacritic, and I'll kind of give you like my final opinion on it with that. Okay, going to the PS5 Metacritic here. PS5 is what I played it on. They have it at a 69 on Metacritic. User score 4.7. Okay. I honestly, I don't think a 69 is too far off for where I'm at. Well, we'll make a little game. We'll make a little game out of this going forward from here on out. We'll do over under, and I'll just tell you if I'm over or under the Metacritic. And for Gotham Knights 69, I mean, top 5 number of all time, but for me, I think I would go. I think I would go under, but I think slightly under. Like, I think a 67 or so is probably where I'm at. And a lot of it is due to technical and performance issues. There is a lot of pop in, a lot of you when you're traversing this open world. It's bad, man. It's really, really bad. You're moving around on your motorbike, and everybody kind of has like the same setup for the motorbike. I thought we were going to get different vehicles for the different characters, and that was kind of the thing I was more interested in. It's like just how the different characters moved through the world, their different combat, which they do have different combat and stuff, kind of same setup and move pattern, which, anyways, as you're moving through the world, you really feel that 30 frames per second just weighing this game down. And then not only is it 30 frames per second, it dips below that on a regular basis as you're moving through the world. And I'm not a frame counter. I don't care about that shit usually. And I shouldn't say I don't care about it usually. I'm not going to make a big to-do over it if it's not apparent and just very, very noticeable. And their whole reasoning for, okay, we can't do 60 frames per second is because of the open world co-op that they were introducing. Well, I mean, a lot of people like you can go offline and play it single player. You don't have to have people pop in. So why is there not a 60 frames per second mode for single player? Why is there not a performance mode for single player? And if you had 30 frames per second for multiplayer and just multiplayer, I think people would understand that. They'd be like, yeah, okay, you are doing the kind of no tethering open world style experience. I think that's what they call it, something tethering, but I don't really know a bunch about multiplayer, if I'm being totally honest. But I think people would be somewhat reasonable with that. They would go, okay, cool. We see that you're trying something here. And if we really want the full 60 frames per second mode, we'll jump back in single player because it is set up in it's open world, but it has a linear progression system where it's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that is usually something that can be experienced in single player. So it's not like, I don't think people are unwilling to play this thing in single player if they want the 60 frames. So it should have had a 60 frames per second single player mode because the open world traversal is brutal at 30. Brutal at 30. Very, very noticeable. Even for people like me and probably any of you out there who aren't frame rate people, I guarantee when you play this game, if you play this game, you'll notice. It'll be something that you really, really notice, especially if you've gotten used to playing on the PS5, playing on the Series X. You'll notice this. So, going over my notes here, seeing if there's anything I didn't cover. I think that we got the most of it, and there's so much stuff to dive into here. So I'll just move on from Gotham Knights. I'm a little bit lower than a 69 on it, but there's some redeemable qualities for this game, and I do think a 60 frames patch would help the game greatly. And I think once people get their hands on this and start messing around with it, once the public can get it for like $15-20 and dive into it, once a lot of those patches are ready to go, I think some people can have a good time with this, especially if you just kind of want to play, a role-playing Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft formula, but with your Bat family. So there's some cool stuff there. I don't totally hate it. Would I recommend buying it for $70? No, absolutely God no. But regardless, into the next game that I have been checking out, the new Tales from the Borderlands. And This is just a feel-good game. I really enjoyed the Telltale Borderlands game. And this is just kind of a feel-good. You put it on right before you're about to go to bed. Play for 2-3 hours. Knock out. Sleep like a damn baby. Because it's just relaxing. It's really, really relaxing. The characters are... it's funny. Early on in the game, the characters kind of suck. They're pretty annoying, especially there's one character named Octavio, and they're hamming it up to like the 10th power of this, it wouldn't be millennial technically, but that sort of millennial attitude, social media driven, very like I have to be in this crowd with the influencers, the Forbes 30 for 30. They don't call it Forbes on here. They call it something else. I forget the name of it, but he's wanting to be in that crowd with the 30. I think they call it the dirty 30, under 30, whatever. But he's really driven by all these material things, and it's just annoying. It's an annoying first impression. And then you have like his sister Anu, and she's real cool. And you have Fran, I believe, is the other character, and she's like down to earth, badass sort of. She has these anger problems and shit, and those characters are cool. But I think even with all of them, and those are like your three main characters, and then you have Louis 13. He's your robot character. He's dope as shit. He never gets annoying. He's cool from moment one to the end. Cool as shit. One of the cooler characters of the year. But early on the three human characters are like, hard to be totally sold on any of them. But slowly over time they really start building up, and there's some great voice performance, some real good writing towards the middle of the game is excellent. Just the whole middle act is so strong. Beginning and end, pretty rough. But the middle act, there's some memorable moments, man. They have like this little play on Shark Tank, their version of Shark Tank, with Cuban and Damon John and all those people. They have like their own twist on it, and they have their invention that they're trying to present at this Shark Tank spinoff. And I guess for those of you who don't know, I'm all over the place. I hope people don't tune into my damn channel thinking I'm sitting there and reviewing games and reading your scripts and shit. I just kind of go where the wind takes me. But for New Tales from the Borderlands, this is a choose your own adventure, narrative driven experience. You're making decisions, clicking some buttons. Do I want to do this? Do I want to respond this way? Just think of your Telltale games. It's very similar to that. The unfortunate thing here, and this is something that the Telltale games rarely ever got wrong, and I love them for this. The Telltale games rarely ever had you going off, moving around as your character, and just interacting with items unnecessarily. This New Tales from the Borderland game absolutely does that way too much. Go and scan this item. Go and click on this text box to see some background information on this character. Go and find this figure. Go and it's like, damn, man, this doesn't need to be here. Just let me pick some decisions. Let me pick some decisions. If you need me to move through the world to get like more immersed in it, just to get from one point to the next, fine. If you need me to stumble upon something and be shocked, have something pop out of nowhere as I'm moving and have that, immersive feeling where it feels like you're coming after me, cool. I get that. Have those moments. But the moments where you're just going around and doing seemingly nothing, just filler content, it's like, come on, man. Come on. We don't need to do this. You're telling a good story. Let's just keep telling the good story. And maybe there's something to be said for a little bit of downtime. I get that. I'm not saying that it's totally worthless, but I don't know. It can break up the pace if it's prolonged. And there's times where it's definitely prolonged, for sure. But yeah, even with that, I will say when you're going around and like kind of looking through different crates and finding money, and then you can like get different costumes for your different characters and shit. And throughout the entire game, I have like all my characters looking as crazy as possible. Like some of that shit's charming and cute, but there's some really there's some really solid moments in this game where like there's a moment where they do a little rip-off of Metal Gear. Not a rip-off of Metal Gear, just a little spoof, a little Metal Gear spoof. And it's so memorable. It's one of those moments that you'll remember throughout the year. It's one that you'll go back to. It's like, that's one of the more clever moments that I've seen in a video game. It's a little throwaway gag, but it's so clever and fun and cute. And it's just... that's kind of the whole vibe with the game. It's an adorable little game. Seeing the banter from the characters throughout, having their, bond grow throughout the game, and then butting heads at times, not understanding each other at times, and then as the game goes on, trying to learn and adapt and grow together. Just some good vibes there. The comedy, I don't think it's going to hit for everybody. It's like really, really, really on the nose comedy, and it's not really, what's the right word for this? It's not trying to push the envelope in any way. It just kind of like little fart joke here, little dick joke there, and I don't know. I felt like with Guardians of the Galaxy, and I bring this up because it's similar, where it's overbearing amounts of dialogue at times, and with a game like this, it's all dialogue, all writing. It just kind of comes down to that through and through, if it's going to deliver or not for you. And then we'll get to the choices in a second, which is the most underwhelming part of the game. But the comedy here, for me, it's fairly safe. And with Guardians of the Galaxy, it was interesting to me how I felt some of that stuff was almost like going over my head. I was like, oh shit, that's actually really cleverly written for just, the comedic value. I feel like the writing, the best parts of the writing in New Tales from the Borderlands is some of the more sincere moments, and then just a little joke in there with that. But whenever they're going for like full tilt humor, I feel like that's where I'm the least hot on the game. And like I said, comedy is super, super subjective. So if you like that kind of crude, but not pushing the envelope in any way, just kind of body humor, fart joke, dick joke, sort of, if you're into that style of humor, I think that you'll find this game funny, I would say. And it's not that I didn't find it funny, but whenever it was like really going hard, hamming it up, going 80% humor in the span of a 5-minute conversation, it's 4 minutes and 55 seconds of humor, that's when I was like, okay, this is a lot here. And I actually did like how they built up the characters, how they wrote the characters, and built the camaraderie, built the different scenarios that you're going in, and like the Shark Tank thing, there's you're going and visiting a morgue in one section, and some of how they led you to these moments is really, really funny. But the actual jokes, I'm not sure they landed for me 100%. But like I said, comedy is super, super damn subjective, and I know a lot of people did not like Guardians of the Galaxy comedy at all, and I actually found that stuff to be pretty funny. And it's just all personal. It's going to come down to your perspective on all of it. I just felt that this kind of walked the line in between safe and fart joke. So I don't know, but yeah. Now, for the biggest factor in all of these choose your own adventure games is the decision making. That's the number one thing that carries these things through to the end. And that's the weakest point of this New Tales from the Borderlands game, for sure. You're making very, very, very few consequential decisions. And it's unfortunate, because I felt like even though the Telltale games often didn't lead you to make super consequential decisions either, they at least gave you that illusion that kept you going through, and you're like, oh man, maybe I did do something big right there. In this new Tales from the Borderlands game, there are very few moments like that at all. Very, very few. And yeah, that's probably the most unfortunate part of the entire game. It just doesn't hook you nearly as well as that first Telltale game does. The visuals are much, much better across the board. And I would even say, like we talked about earlier, the set pieces, I think, are much better. And at times, I think the writing is a little bit better, where out of nowhere you have that absurdist humor just come up, and you're in a moment you're not expecting, and it just hits you real quickly, and you're like, oh shit. That's a nice way to throw that little joke in there, throw that little bit in there. They do have those moments, and that's the thing that sucks, because there are those moments where you're like, damn, man, you can tell that it's some good writers on board here. It's just, like I said, it's going to come down to the personal, subjective opinion on how you feel about the delivery and the frequency of these jokes. Whenever, and I keep on going into the humor here, because that is kind of the big thing with this game. The humor is very consistent throughout. But whenever they pulled back a little bit and just hit you with one you weren't expecting, I really like that. So it's an up and down style of experience here. I guess we'll pull up the Metacritic real quick and make our final judgment. Holy shit, it is sitting at a 56 on Metacritic. I'm not a 56 at all. Well, it's only 4 reviews. Let's go to okay, here we go. The PC version is sitting at a 70 with 50 critic reviews and a 3.9 for the user score. Oh man. Okay, so it's I'm like in between a 59 and a 70. I'm not a 70 on it. I'm probably honestly like a 65 or so is where I would probably be at on it, because there's nothing broken about it at all. It played through from start to end, no problems. Once again, it's a very low, there's not a lot going on there. You're not having to factor in for a bunch of different gameplay sequences, and honestly, you're not even having to factor in for a bunch of different choices that really matter and change and have different narrative through lines. Like it's pretty by the numbers guided experience. And I'm not saying that there's not slight differences, but not that many. Not many significant ones, at least. So I'm in between. I'd say I'm probably about a 65 on the new Tales from the Borderlands game. I don't hate it. Once again, similar to Gotham Knights. It's just a little bit underwhelming across the board, but I don't hate either experience, really. Okay, and next up, let's talk about Shadows of Rose. Resident Evil, the DLC, tying up, finalizing, putting the final stamp on the winner's saga. We are here. It is time. And I can't tell you, I know this is going to sound mean or whatever, but I mean, it's fictional characters. Who gives a shit? Well, it is somebody's writing, which, sorry, but I'm so glad to be moving on from these characters. Don't get me wrong. I love 7, love 8, really even like Shadows of Rose. But man, I'm so ready to have a blank slate and an open book where we can kind of fill in the details as we go, create new characters, go back to iconic characters, whatever. But Shadows of Rose wraps everything up for the Winter Saga, and I think that the gameplay is really fun. Being in Resident Evil 8, essentially different. They have different set pieces that they set up, and it's wild that they actually have a lot of Little Nightmares inspiration in Shadows of Rose, where those of you who played Little Nightmares 2 will remember a really tough section where you had enemies coming at you and you had to spin and shine your flashlight at them to make them stop in place. Shadows of Rose kind of takes that entire concept. I'm not saying, it's not people can be inspired by other creators, yada, yada, yada. Nothing wrong with that. But even more than just doing that, they go and you flip from that to being like this little person, big world style of experience. Like right after that, it's like, oh shit, you're wearing your inspiration on your sleeve for this one. But, I don't think it's like blatantly ripping them off or anything egregious like that. But it is apparent that there's some Little Nightmares inspiration. There's some fans of Little Nightmares on that team. Has to be. Absolutely has to be. But it's, those are cool segments. That's probably my favorite segment throughout the entire game. And just, going through some of the set pieces in RE8 as Rose in third person, getting to experience her journey as she's trying to rid herself of these, let's just say these abilities that she doesn't want to have. She doesn't want to possess these abilities, and she is doing everything in her power to rid herself of these abilities, to be a normal human. And so you're going through that journey with her, and you're revisiting some of those iconic set pieces, and you have these new I guess you kind of gotta you have these new powers that you can use, that you can play with. And I think this has been in the trailer. I'll put a little spoiler thing in. I'm going to go and check the trailers. If it wasn't in the trailers, I'll put a little spoiler column in here so that people know that, there is some slight story details here, which you learn this from the beginning of the game. And you even kind of get this hinted at in RE8. But you have the ability to, like, you can freeze enemies with your hand. So enemy will be charging at you, and you can like freeze them with your hand and then take some shots at them while they're froze. Or there'll be these orbs that have like this mold coming out of the ground, and then this orb is attached to like the top of it, and then there's a stem or a root taking everything down to the mold. And when you shoot the orb, you have to freeze the orb, and it will get rid of all the mold underneath it. So that's how you can kind of maneuver throughout the world. And the mold kind of does a good job of like guiding you to where you need to go, so you're never really backtracking, you're never really lost. It pretty much removes that entirely through the kind of guide of this mold on the ground. And but there's cool little gameplay encounters that get set up with your new freezing powers that you're using. Because say, an enemy is nearby, and you see the orb that you have to freeze to clear the mold to get to where you need to go next. Or there's a door that's being barricaded by this mold, and if you freeze the orb, it'll remove the mold from the door that you need to traverse through. Well, say an enemy's charging at you, you see the orb that you need to shoot at, or shoot your ice at with your hand, like a fucking goddamn Fantastic Four character. But the enemy's charging at you, and you're like, okay, do I need to waste my ammo on him, or should I just go ahead and try to hit this orb and see if I have enough time to get through it? So it creates those like sort of tense encounters. And it was fun to mess around with that a little bit. Like, enemies charging at me. Damn, I think I have enough time just to shoot this orb. Maybe not. I'm gonna run off a couple shots in this enemy to buy myself a little bit more time, so I can get this orb and know I'm lining it up, and know that I'm gonna get through without having to waste any of my first aid or anything like that. So little sections like that are what make Resident Evil games in general fun. Obviously, you don't have superpowers in Resident Evil games typically, but just those moments of, can I reach this door? Do I need to take out this enemy? Can I figure out a way to maneuver around the enemy? I say enemy for all damn enemy types, but zombies typically with Resident Evil or lichens or mold or whatever you want to say for your typical Resident Evil games. But here it's cool because the mold on the ground, it'll if you touch it for too long, or if you're walking in it for too long, it'll suck you up and bring you down into the damn underworld. And so and it'll kill you. So you have to kind of always be cautious and aware of where you're walking and where you're moving at all times. And it kind of keeps you in a sort of hallway structure at all times. And so when when an enemy is approaching you, you have to kind of be aware, okay, do I want to just go ahead and take you out? Because there's no way of really getting around you in most scenarios. Whereas in other games, locations are a lot bigger. You have a lot more room to move around. And a lot of times you can just juke an enemy out, go on to your next destination without shooting any rounds off at all. And here they try to prevent that as much as possible. Don't get me wrong. By the time you get to the final boss, you're going to be loaded with ammo, loaded with first aid. So you're never going to be like overly challenged or anything like that, at least not on the normal difficulty. But it is still just giving you slight little alterations to make this experience worthwhile as well. It's not just straight up giving you back to everything that was RE8 and letting you play through it in third person as Rose and just kind of seeing what her dad went through and reliving his journey through her shoes. I was worried that might have been a little bit of what was going on here. It's not that at all. You do have a totally different story set up. There's some cinematic moments that play out, and I do think the story is carried through decently until the end. Once again, man, a lot of games here just did not end in a real strong way. We'll say Gotham Knights ended in a real strong way there. It's and actually ended pretty well, and it Tales from the Borderlands and Shadows of Rose. I didn't love the ending on either, but to be fair, I'm just so tired of the Winters family. I really want to move on. I really want to move on. So by the time I was done with the game, I was like, I had fun with it. I enjoyed my time here. I liked playing the game, but I'm done with this story. So that is kind of my take on it. Now let's head over on to Metacritic, see where Shadows of Rose... Do they even do reviews for DLC? Oh, okay. So they have here the just the whole Winters expansion. Like there's no review for just specifically Shadows of Rose on Metacritic here. And I haven't played through... I'm definitely, without a doubt, going to play through in third person again, just to play through RE8 again and and play through it in third person for the first time. But they have the Winters expansion overall at a 74, and just being honest, Shadows of Rose, a little 3-hour play through it in one sitting. Like it's hard for me to even give like a real review on that. Like what my experience there? $20, got to factor that into it. I paid $20 for the thing, so like for my $20, I would definitely say it's a worthwhile $20 investment. I got 3 hours, $20. Like, sure, it wasn't anything offensive at all. It's hard for me to give a number on this. I'll say, what was the damn score that they had? 74. I'll say that I'm higher than that. Overall, I'm higher than that. I'd probably say I'm like a 77, 78 on it. Nothing offensive about the Shadows of Rose DLC at all. I'm really excited to move on, but nothing bad about it at all. And so I will definitely play through like I said, I'll play through the third person mode as Ethan. I know there's other content in that DLC pack as well, but I really only interested in Shadows of Rose in the third person, getting to play through RE8 in third person. Okay, so those are the 3 games I finished, and now we will dive into 2 games I'm currently playing, or, well, technically 1 game I'm currently playing and 1 game that I will absolutely finish this damn game sometime. And we'll dive into that real quick because I'm already thinking about it. Whenever something comes out to Game Pass, like with Scorn, it's the same thing. I pay the money for Tales, I pay the money for Gotham Knights, I pay the money for Shadows of Rose, I immediately go, okay, well, I gotta play these first because I paid for them. But if you really think about it, if I paid for it and I own it, I might want to play the damn Game Pass thing first because there's actually a risk of me losing the thing on Game Pass. Like, it might just completely vanish one day and I had a damn opportunity to play it and then I'm not diving into it. So I gotta, reconsider my thought process there. But Signalis, man, I played this for about 3 hours, maybe 2 hours, and I was so into this thing. Old school Resident Evil inspired tank-based controls, old school survival horror. One of the best maps that I've ever seen in one of those old school survival horror style games. It even has like the different key items highlighted when you interact with them, really modernizing that experience, giving you a map that if there's something important in a room, it allows you to know that that's something you need to go back to. And those little modern touches combined with that old school feel for, this tank-based old school survival horror flow, this old school survival horror gameplay. It's just, it was really, really good. And then I was fucking up left and right on this thing. I somehow managed to, I didn't grab the main weapon. So like I got the shotgun, but I didn't have the handgun. And I'm picking up all this handgun ammunition, but I don't have my damn handgun. Like, what the hell is going on here? So this is one that there's so much stuff coming out. I'm going to put this to the backlog, whatever you want to call it. Put it there for now. I'll go back to it. I'm going to restart the whole thing because I want to replay it again. I want to get invested in that story from the beginning. And they got some cool cutscenes, a really weird premise, some just shocking early on moments where you're like, what the hell is going on here? You're kind of shifting between realities at times, it seems, and just messing with your mind a little bit. Like, where are we? What's going on? And some good puzzles, some good difficult puzzles where you're like, what is this logo? A tree on this thing that I'm trying to solve? What significance is that? What do I do here? The only clue I have is a tree. Well, what the hell have I found throughout my time here that is, relating to a tree? And then you're like, oh shit, I do remember a note that I picked up that had a bunch of different details listed on it with, where you can maybe find some clues at, and you're starting to go through your brain, and it brings you back to those classic feeling survival horror puzzles where you actually do have to put a little bit of thought in. But from what I've played so far, like I said, only 2.5, 3 hours in, everything feels doable. It's simple enough for it to be accessible to people who like, those old school classic survival horror games, but maybe get turned off by something like Silent Hill where it's very, very difficult. The puzzle solving is very, very difficult. This isn't that at all. And in the gameplay, and I didn't even, have my damn handgun, so I'm just kind of zipping around through the enemies. I'm getting ate up, constantly getting got, but I feel like if I had my handgun, I would have been running through it with no issue at all. But even without that, just having the little stun stick that I'm using nonstop and wasting the hell out of those. But you stun them, or when you shoot them, when I got my shotgun and I was shooting them, like they would fall, and then you would go and stomp on their head. So it's like giving you a little bit of that Dead Space feel. Obviously, the visceral nature isn't there. The up close encounter, the personal third person over the shoulder view isn't there. But it's giving you a little bit of a lot of these modern sensibility, these modern touches added into this old school package, and it's just so good. It's paced so well so far. Like I said, so far it could go off the rails, but so far I've really, really been enjoying this. There's almost nothing that I can say negative about this thing, other than for people who aren't into old school survival horror games. obviously this might not be for you, and you might find some complaints with it. I will say the overall world might be a little bit too big and too ambitious, which is crazy, but there's a lot of rooms, a lot of sections that you're going through, and it's jarring how big this game is it's like a 1-2 gigabyte download. So you're like, damn, how do they pack all this shit into 2 gigabytes? But yeah, obviously it's not visually, it's not too intensive or graphically intense. Like it's old school survival horror through and through. It's not trying to match modern visual fidelity in any way, shape, or form. Everything looks very, very old school, from environments to characters to everything, but nice and gory and great, like just great art style, great use of small little details that kind of give you some understanding of what's going on in the story, but still keeping you on edge and not really aware of what's coming next. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time with Signalis. I'm for sure going to go back through it and play through it in its entirety. Okay, and I just booted up Bayonetta 3, only a couple hours into this bad boy so far, so I can't give you any real in-depth impressions. We'll kick off the next what I'm playing, going deep into, more of the systems and details for this game. But so far, a couple of the key standouts for Bayonetta 3 for me that I've noticed that are different from the first game is, the setup of the story, for sure, it is very different. They're trying to seemingly delve into the multiverse here, and even making some little MCU jokes, making some Thanos snap jokes and shit. So I thought that was cool. We'll see how all of that plays out. I think I do prefer Helena Taylor over Jennifer Hale for the voice actress. Jennifer Hale's so good, such a incredible voice actress that I just finished Bayonetta 2. So I think the people who finished Bayonetta 2 back in the day and they haven't replayed it since then, I don't even think they would be able to tell it's a different voice actress. Unless you're, like I said, if you're replaying it, staying fresh on it, then for sure. But Jennifer Hale's such a great voice actress that she's pretty much able to emulate a lot of the cadence and delivery that Helena Taylor brought. But you can, like I said, I'm fresh off of Bayonetta 2, only a few weeks ago, played through it. And so I was able to tell some of those slight differences. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. I think I might have preferred Helena Taylor's voice so far, but I'm sure over time the Jennifer Hale, the new voice, will kind of grow on me, and I'll start to I don't even know what you say. I guess start to appreciate that more, or just kind of start to blend them together so much to where I forget the differences or whatever. But yeah, I can definitely see that happening over time. But yeah, it so far the story setup is intriguing to me for sure. Not really doing anything to build up Viola yet, which I find weird. I don't really know why that buildup isn't already occurring, because she is already in my universe. It's established that she's here, and like that happens really early on in the game. So I was like, well, why aren't we doing anything to build you up? I'm sure that'll all get resolved later on, but yeah. So for the gameplay, the first thing that caught my attention that was very different, and I think this is a crucial key factor, is that you now have a waypoint system. So you click L3 or whatever the hell the Switch calls L3, and you have a icon that pops up that tells you where you need to go. And this is an incredible feature just in terms of accessibility, in terms of keeping you on a guided path. But I don't think it was ever really needed in the other games. And I don't, to be totally honest, I'm saying it's a new feature, but I don't even know if that's factual. This could have been in the other games, but the other games are so linear and to the point that I feel like that's a feature you really don't even need. Whereas with this game, immediately, you get to the first kind of open level of the game, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a feature I definitely need. This is a big fucking game. And you get to a Tokyo section that's humongous, and there are some big levels. Even just in the early, the early 2 or so hours that I've put into the game, there's some big sections that you get to experience. So yeah, I think that feature, I can only imagine how much bigger it's going to get from here. So I think that feature was added out of necessity. You also have these new summons that you can trigger at not anytime. You got to fill up this meter, and these new badass monsters come popping out of the ground, attacking the different enemies that you're fighting in the game. And you're controlling them as Bayonetta, but you can't really move, so you're vulnerable to damage. And if you get hit while the big bad monster motherfucker, the demon summon, I believe they call him, while they're doing the damage, if you get hit, it will send you out of that mode. You'll be kicked out of that, and then you'll have to rebuild your meter back up before you can use the monster again. But it's cool just immediately to have that in the game, and I've already unlocked 2 of them, and I think there's 2 more slots. So throughout the game, I assume you'll have 4 or maybe multiple different ones to swap in between. You actually, even early on, you have a totally new gun that you unlock early in the story that you can use. It's like this humongous weapon. You can bash enemies over the head with it, shoot these multiple almost cannon-esque shots. So there's a lot going on early on in the combat to differentiate it from the other games. And it's even leaning in a little bit more to the role playing and the upgrades and skill trees and shit than the other games. Like, you can go in just straight from a skill tree menu, upgrade your vitality or whatever. And as with the other games, you'll either have to go to Hell's Gate to get these different things, or you'll have to unlock it through the Witch Hearts, and that's how you'll upgrade your vitality in like Bayonetta 1. But with Bayonetta 3, you just press the damn menu, you go to your skill tree, you got your skills there, you're upgrading, you get points, and like, okay, well shit, we got a little bit of a role-playing system going on here with Bayonetta 3, and it's all very, very simple. It's something that anybody who's ever played a damn video game, you'll look at it, you'll understand exactly what to do, how to upgrade your character, all right there in the menu screen, by the number, simple, to the point. Like, okay, it's I think a lot of these kind of quality of life features are important here, and so far have made quite a big difference. I'm really, really enjoying this. I love Bayonetta 1, love Bayonetta 2. I should say I really, really like Bayonetta 2. I love Bayonetta 1. But I think Bayonetta 2, and this could be a similar issue with Bayonetta 3, it's just the fact that it's on the Switch. And that's like, if I was playing this on a PS5 or a Series X, it'd probably be my damn game of the year. But Switch, just, I can feel this thing being held back by the power of the Switch. And you have your pop-ins happening across the board. It just, even cutscenes, the characters, the NPCs and shit in the cutscenes look so, just, I don't know, so old school kind of PS3 vibes. And it's definitely being held back by the Switch. I really hope that within the next year, 2 years, that maybe like Metroid Prime 4, we get a brand new Switch or brand new Nintendo console to go alongside it, and you can have these things, running a little bit smoother at a higher fidelity. And I don't know, it'd just be nice to be playing Bayonetta 3 with like, a nice consistent 60 FPS at freaking 4K or whatever, like that would just be incredible. I'm not saying even some of the modern games with Series X and PS5, you're having to pick either fidelity or performance mode. So I'm not saying my expectations are that high for Nintendo to be running both 4K 60 for the Switch 2 or for the Super Switch or whatever they end up running out with, but it would just be nice to have like some of those some of those features that are becoming a little bit more standard, having that available on Nintendo consoles for games like Bayonetta and some of their other first-party games, to use those and to optimize those. Like with freaking the new Zelda game, like it would just be great to see that running on some new hardware. So yeah, but I've been enjoying Bayonetta 3 so far for sure, and I'm absolutely gonna finish that, and that will be the first game we kick off the next episode of what I'm playing with. So yeah, that is it for me for the last few weeks. A lot of good stuff, and early on in November we got some good stuff rolling. We got some The Chant, we got some God of War Ragnarok. So next video we will be talking probably about Bayonetta 3, The Chant, and maybe early God of War Ragnarok. We'll see how all that lines up. But I appreciate you good people for watching, and I will get out of your hair. Shoot me. Please don't shoot me. Shoot the shit with me in the comments below, and let me know. Let me know what you have been playing. Let me know what some standout games that you have been diving into, some recommendations that you have, and yeah. Drop the video a like if you liked it, all that good stuff. Do what you do. Subscribe if you're new. All that, yada, yada, yada. Appreciate you for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.